Hey folks, it's Nate. It's time I got back to the drawing board, and I'm here with part 2 of our latest book club study, and it's Naoki Urosawa's Monster. We're looking at chapter 2, and this is where we start to see things really take off. This is where Tenma makes the decision that defines him for decades to come. And because these consequences will play out for a while. So what is the decision? Well, we hear that, as we saw at the end of the previous chapter, there's been a double murder, and there's a child with a bullet in his brain. And when you have a bullet in your brain, you go to a neurosurgeon. Who's the best neurosurgeon at Eisler Memorial Hospital? Well, it's Kenzo Tenma. So they call Tenma in, and they give him the details of the patient. And as Tenma's driving, he looks over in the seat here, and he sees his fiancée Ava's handkerchief, and he flashes back to a discussion he had with the director of the hospital. Now, this is, who is also Ava's father, by the way. Now, this is kind of a protracted scene that just shows some of the what's the word for it? Cognitive dissonance. There it is. That's underpinning Tenma as he works here. Tenma is a brilliant surgeon, and not just on the operating table, but in theory. He writes excellent papers that can get published, and he hopes to one day take over this hospital. But in the meantime, he's very much under the thumb of the director. And we see that as the director demands Tenma put the work and research he wants to do aside to bolster the director as he jockeys for position in the Western Germany medical system, and so on and so forth. This is pretty effective stuff. Now, I don't know anything about the actual East German medical system of the time. It's shown as working very much the way the Japanese medical system works, through professional associations and politicking and things like that. I'm sure, that kind of politicking is universal. I just don't know if it works in the same way, or it worked in the same way in Eastern Germany at the time or not. I don't know how much research that Urosawa actually did when he was writing this. It is very effective in building up Tenma's cognitive dissonance in being a servant to injured people on the one hand as a doctor, and on the other hand needing to advance his own career in order to ensure he can continue doing what he does best, which is save lives as a neurosurgeon. So there's a lot of conflict between those roles, and this flashback is very effective in showing us where Tenma is in that conflict. As he thinks about it. Especially, we see there's a flashback within the flashback as Tenma and the director discuss the previous surgery with the opera singer and the Turkish laborer whose importance in whose status in the trauma queue was downgraded, or excuse me, not trauma, triage queue was downgraded in favor of Herr Rosenbach, the opera singer. And that's something that's really weighing on Tenma as he goes into this situation. So Tenma arrives at the hospital, and he gets to, his first look at Johann Liebner. Is that correct? Liebert. Johann Liebert, who is the gunshot victim who we'll be operating on. And this is a very effective image right here, I think, because there's no words here, there's no description of the trauma. It just shows us an injured boy, and that's what's tugging on Tenma's heartstrings right now. And that's about to be put in, that's about to be strained as we find out that the mayor of Dusseldorf has suffered a stroke. And as is kind of, the way we saw before, the director is going to play politics with this. He says that Mayor Rodecker is on the upcoming medical review special committee. He promised to significantly increase the public subsidies for Eisler Memorial. We can't have him dying on us just now. Once again, the director is telling Tenma that there is a life that is more important than another life. And Tenma's obligations as a doctor are coming up against his obligations as a person who is looking to the future of his own career and that of the hospital. And the director wants him to operate on the mayor, not on the child. On the other hand, that doesn't sit well with Tenma, and we see him mull this over. We just see him silent here as he thinks about all the things people have said to him over the past few days since this surgery he did on Herr Rosenbach, the opera singer. And this is really effective, again, in building suspense and tension. We've seen Tenma go along with this once before. He kind of acquiesced in the case of Herr Rosenbach, partly because it was already done, but partly, I think, because he kind of saw some merit to the arguments that Heinemann and Eva made. And he struggles a lot. But ultimately, Tenma makes his decision. And again, this is the decision that will define him for the next 15 years or so. And he decides he's going to operate on the boy. And he leaves the operation on the mayor to the less qualified surgeon who handled the operation on the Turkish laborer who ultimately died. And that's the end of the chapter. And it's an interesting chapter because we do see this, the nepotism, the corruption, the moral quandaries in the hospital system that lead up to this decision. But ultimately, this is, again, not a story about medicine or nepotism or corruption. It's a story about a monster. And now that Tenma's decision is made, we have to grapple with the monster he's let loose. But that's for the next chapter. So until then, well, if you like what you heard today, there's a like button and a subscribe button down below. You can use them as you see fit, and I'll talk to you later.